different in here.
It's cold.
I think it's how it reflects off the blue or something like that, maybe.
Maybe. My understanding that they did a good job to make sure that that wasn't coming out of the back of my head. I didn't check to see if it was a computer.
I said check multiple times.
Right, okay.
I can't, as much as I might like it, I can't reach
Well, the chair. The chair.
But we could have like a Laurel Penelope Smith who's like,
Right.
she's
Right,
like
exactly.
up here.
Well, no, I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about him.
Okay, not more technology problems.
Sorting,
Come on.
finish citing cards.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah. We have to do the field trip fees first, which I'm assuming nobody's here for. Just finish signing. All right. Ready? This special meeting of the Independent School District 535 School Board is called to order at 5:31 p.m. on Tuesday, October 21st, 2025, in room 137 of the Edison building. Present at this meeting are school board members, Superintendent Kent Packel, a non-voting ex officio member, and Assistant School Board Clerk, Ms. Ann Kramer. Ms. Kramer, would you please call the roll?
Director Barlow,
Here.
Treasurer Cook,
Here.
Director McLaughlin,
Here.
Clerk Marvin,
Here.
Chair Nathan,
Here.
Director Whitehorn, Vice Chair Workman.
Here. The board acknowledges this site and all RPS sites are situated on the ancestral land of the Dakota people, and we honor the Dakota nations and the sacred land of all indigenous peoples. At this time, we offer the opportunity to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2 is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Move approval.
Second. It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda has been approved. The agenda and documents for this meeting are available online at rochesterschools.org/assembly. Our first item is a focused topic on curriculum-related field trip fees. In accordance with the pupil fee law found in Minnesota Statute Section 123B38, before the initiation of any fee not authorized or prohibited by Sections 123B36 and 123B37, the school board must hold a public hearing. Tonight, we will hold a public hearing about field trip requests for students of Rochester Public Schools where student fees will be charged. The new field trip requests, which we are bringing forward to the public hearing, are described in Agenda Item 3.2. The attachments in the agenda item provide information about these field trips. The field trip is all high schools, environmental awareness, sports bio class fees. The attachment SB approved enrichment field trips lists all the field trips where school board approval for a fee has already been obtained. If there are members of the public who wish to make public comments on any of the field trip requests, please raise your hand to be recognized. Once you're recognized by the chair, you may come to this table and choose a microphone to speak into. You'll have 3 minutes to speak and the timer will be displayed in front of me. Is there anyone who would like to make comments on the field trip fees? Is there anyone who would like to make comments on the field trip fees? And a final call for comments on the field trip fees. Seeing no requests for comments, this public hearing is adjourned at 5:34 p.m. Yep. This regular meeting of the Independent School District 535 School Board is called to order at 5:35 p.m. on Tuesday, October 21st, 2025, in room 137 of the Edison building. Present at this meeting are school board members, Superintendent Ken Pakel, a non-voting ex officio member, and Assistant School Board Clerk, Ms. Ann Kramer. Ms. Kramer, would you please call the roll?
Director Barlow,
Here.
Teacher Cook,
Here.
Director McLaughlin,
Here.
Clerk Marvin,
Here.
Chair Nathan,
Here.
Director Whitehorn, Vice Chair Workman.
Here.
The board acknowledges this site and all RPS sites are situated on the ancestral land of the Dakota people, and we honor the Dakota nations and the sacred land of all indigenous peoples. And at this time, we offer the opportunity to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is a new item, Rochester Public Schools Mission, Vision, and Values. During this agenda item at every regular meeting, a board member will read our mission, our vision, or one of our 6 values to emphasize their importance in our work as a district and our decisions as a board. For those of you watching online, the back wall of the boardroom now displays the mission, vision, and value statements of Rochester Public Schools. Tonight, we start with our mission. Our mission is to equip every student with the knowledge, independence, and resilience to pursue a fulfilling path. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes?
Move approval. Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda has been approved. The agenda and documents for this meeting are available online at rochesterschools.org/assembly. Item 3, there are no comments to the board this evening, so we'll move on to information and outreach. Our first item is the recognition of unified programming at Mayo High School. Superintendent Pakel.
Thank you, Chair Nathan and board members. I'd like to invite Colin Thomas and the team from Mayo to come on up and join us. I think take a seat wherever it works, and we want to make sure either if Ms. Kramer is going to be clicking through for you or if they need the clicker. Board members, this wonderful program, which we are here to celebrate tonight at Mayo High School, exists in other schools, not just in Rochester and across the state, but across the country. And Mayo High School's program was recently recognized with the Special Olympics National Banner Award. It's an honor that's bestowed upon a select number of schools across the United States to develop and implement unified programs, and you're going to hear about the unified program in a moment, which I know board members are also familiar with, that meet the highest standards set by Special Olympics. Mayo High School is only one of 5 high schools in Minnesota to be recognized as part of the National Banner Class of 2025, and over the past decade, Mayo High School is only one of only 15 schools in the state to have ever received this national nomination. So we want to thank you for the amazing programming that you do for our students, and look forward to a little glimpse of why you were recognized for such excellence.
All right. Well, thank you guys for the invitation to come here today. It's an honor, and it's a pretty unique opportunity that we get to sit here and tell you about this amazing program that's transformed the high school experience for so many of our students with and without special needs. I'm going to tell you, this has all come about from the ground up. This was not something that came from above, an administrator or teacher. This all came about because of one student who had a brother with special needs. She called me up one day and she said, Colin, I want to bring this unified program to Mayo High School. Would you be willing to do it? And I knew this student. I knew nothing about what she was telling me about, but I believed in the student. I said, sure, I'll do whatever you need. Lo and behold, we're sitting before you today, and this program has absolutely exploded. The unified program is designed to build relationships between our students with and without special needs. For the longest time, our students with special needs sat in that classroom, or they sat at that lunch table, or they were over here during a pet fest. And this student saw something potential for more than that. As a result, we've transformed the culture there at Mayo High School, where our students with special needs are walking through the halls with their heads up, looking for their buddies to give high fives. Our students with special needs there at Mayo High School are going to homecoming. We had a group of about 40 to 50 students who went to homecoming this year. Our students are getting involved with a club every Thursday morning. We've had unified classes. We bring them on field trips. But it's not just impacting our students with special needs, it's impacting our gen ed students as well. And I know as a school district, it's important to, the reading, writing, and math are really important. but just as important is learning how to love and serve and care for other people. And this program is meeting that need like you wouldn't believe. We have people across the district who are asking, oh, how do we get this at our school? How do we get this at our school? And up until this point, it's been Mayo. And we're slowly branching it out to try to get it to more schools. And we realize that this is an opportunity for you guys to become aware of what it is. And hopefully we can also get your support as we attempt to grow this throughout the district, realizing the impact it's had here. So we're gonna start with a quick video that was produced back in the COVID era.
Unified together, all different backgrounds, ages, abilities, together.
Unified brings in the general education students with the special education students. And our whole goal is all about relationships. We're building relationships.
So it provides that greater gen ed experience, but in a more manageable dose for the kids in my classroom, because sometimes when there are a lot of kids, it's overwhelming. So when they come to us, it's in a safer environment that we're familiar with. So we really can enjoy activities together and have a shared experience.
Unified is designed to create a community of acceptance and inclusion for students with and without special needs. We currently do that through a wide variety of means, including at this time offering both Unified Art and Unified Physical Education classes.
I think Unified is a great place to, just meet so many new people and maybe even see some old faces, and I think it's just a great way to get together with the entire student body.
A sculpture. So a sculpture doesn't have to be made out of clay. A sculpture could be made out of paper.
Unified Art is this class that came to us a couple years ago. I come in and the students are chattering with each other, they're coming together. Whether they're a student who has special needs or a student who's a general ed, you would not know in that classroom because they're all interacting with each other as if they're interacting with their best friends. They're all learning about each other and how to communicate with each other.
Building relationships in a PE setting. So we're doing all those super great PE activities, team skills, team activities, team sports, individual movement, fitness, all that stuff, but we sprinkle it in heavily with relationships. And we're working on behavior skills, social skills, and a lot of social emotional learning, like how am I going to react if I lose this game? Or how can I maybe use 5-finger breathing if I'm getting worked up about something? It's all about peer leadership skills, just gaining all this friendship.
I enjoy being involved in Unified. I have lots of friends and I get to hang out, do lots of activities.
Every school needs the type of culture that we've built here at Mayo, and the environment that we've created at Mayo is so strong because we have unified programs, and a lot of other schools just don't really have that.
I saw a quote one time that said something like, you learn more about someone through an hour of play than a year of conversation. And I don't think that's exemplified anywhere else like better than Unified.
You get a little glimpse of it here. But in order to exemplify it even more, I brought a couple of people who have been integral to making this program happen. We'll start with Andrea Bacon here to my right. Andrea was there from day one when it first started, and she is our adapted PE teacher. She's the one who's helped Unified PE take off here in the district. And her vision and passion for it is compared to no other.
Thanks, Colin. Sorry, I got emotional in there. One of our former students was in there.
Who just recently passed away. Jonathan Gonzalez Lino, young man in there that was in there with glasses. He was why we do what we do. The impact Unified had for him, it changed his high school experience like you wouldn't believe. He scooted through those halls and everyone knew Jonathan.
Everyone knew Jonathan.
So
he
you
always
got
put
this.
his chocolate milk on my
Cart.
Anyway, so I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, so in some capacity, I have done some sort of Unified at Mayo. I was trying to look back on Skyward, and I was like, okay, well, it gives me back about 2011. And within that time range, I've had about 125 general education students come through the program. And at the end of the semester, I always ask for their feedback, and the most common feedback I get from them is that it's their favorite class that they've had in their whole high school career. And a lot of them come back and take it again. The student that I was going to bring with today, but he couldn't come, he's in his third semester of it. I can't shake him. But they just love it. They'd rather do it than take like an open hour or whatever. But it's about relationships. It's an environment where everyone feels safe. They feel loved. It's completely, I know I'm gonna come in here and have a good time. My DAPE students, I always have a group of them that they run. They literally run into the gym because they're so excited to see their unified friends. And it, like Colin said, it branches out. It just doesn't stay in the gym. It goes out into the hallway, into the homecoming, everywhere. And you know, when these kids are with their gen ed friends out in the hallway, like the student I was gonna bring, he's on a soccer team. So his soccer friends see that, oh, he's hanging out with him, so that's cool, you know? And it's just like a domino effect. But it's really amazing, and I just babbled, but thank you for having us.
We're gonna go back one slide there, just if you don't mind. If looking at these pictures here, the impact that it's had. Yeah, we see the large groups, we got the polar plunge that we bring to all the 3 high schools now. But the photo that means the most to me is the little boy who's sitting there shooting a basketball. Okay, it's quiet, there's not a crowd cheering him on. But that's one of our gen ed students who quietly comes alongside and builds that relationship to be able to make that shot. And that is the quiet essence of what Unified is. Yeah, it's great when we have the big stuff, but it's those moments when they take it on in themselves. You'll see a couple, of our prom pictures there, things like that. Those moments are great. But it's that personal one-on-one relationships that's transformed that high school experience for both of those individuals in that photo. We're going to turn now to a couple of our student leaders. If you want a poster child for Rochester Public Schools, these are the 2 that you want right there. Their heart and compassion is unbelievable. And you need to hear how this has maybe impacted their high school experience and their lives as a whole.
Okay, I guess I can go first. My name is Violet Hallam. I'm a junior at Mayo, obviously. But I was asked to say like how Unified has changed my life and how it's affected, and I was thinking about it, I was like, how do I even pick one? Like, Unified has, like, my life before Unified, it was fine. But like after it, there's just been so many ways that it's just affected and just like created me into the person that I am today because of it. And I think I'll just give a couple examples, but it's allowed me to step outside of my comfort zone. Like before high school, I was very shy. I didn't really talk to very many people, but coming to coming to Mayo High School and then realizing that I should join Unified Club, I was able to step outside of my comfort zone and realize that I can focus on other people instead of myself. And when I serve other people, I'm able to, grow, and these other people are able to see that I'm here for them, right? And it gives a relationship for them and me. And some of these kids are just like my favorite people in the entire world, right? They're just like the most genuine and pure people in the entire world, and they will just love you. And when you realize that and realize that you can step outside of yourself and just serve other people, I think that's something that's really important that I've learned at Unified. And I think that other people are able to see that too, that, you don't have to fit into a mold to be loved, right? You can be different, and it's the different people that build up everything that creates Unified. And I don't know, that's what I love about Unified.
Thank you. Penny, what do you got?
Okay, well, I'm Penny Hauser. I'm also a junior at Mayo. And I feel like our Unified journey started off with it was like the club fair in our freshman year, and we saw this club with a lot of music and some games at a table, and we were like, okay. And then so we went to our first Unified Club, and it was maybe 20-ish people. But we kept going, and then 2 years later we're co-presidents of it, and it's changed me into such a different person. Same thing with Violet. I moved here pretty recently, when we were in freshman year, and I didn't talk to a lot of people. I didn't grow up with these people in my school. But I feel like Unified has just made me connect with so many more people, both gen ed and special ed. And those kids are so funny, and they're so awesome, and they're such good friends, and they're so pure. And even if my week has been going terrible or something terrible happens, I know that Thursday mornings it'll it'll be okay. Like, everyone leaves with a smile on their face. Like, everyone says they have a good time. And I didn't prepare anything for this. It's made me a better person. Like, I'm able to find those people that I've seen at Unified Club. Maybe I don't remember their name because I'm really bad at that. But, like, I'll see them, I'll say hi, or, like, we'll sit with them at lunch, or we'll find them at homecoming. Like, we go to homecoming and prom with them. Like, or I'll see graduated ones that, like, I'll see them, like, I saw one of our graduated students at Panera, and I was like, oh, Jonah, what's up? And it just, like, I feel like a nicer, kinder person. It's helped me with relationships with special needs kids and, like, general ed students, like, just being able to love everyone and just, like, giving benefit of the doubt and just, like, being a good friend for anyone who needs it. And I think Unified's been a giant help with that. And I don't want to graduate because I don't want to leave it. And
we can make that happen.
Let's do it. Don't
No,
worry.
we can't.
Yeah, history class.
We'll see how macro goes. But yeah, it's just, I love it, and I would be such a different person without it. But I'm glad can't talk. I'm glad I'm the person I am now, and I know it's because of Unified.
We have one final person who wished to speak, and that was Sawyer. But Sawyer plays for the Raiders. And the Raiders have a huge game tonight in Dakota, which if you consider like the Yankees a major, Dakota's like, you want to beat them. So Sawyer's like, what do? I said, you go beat Dakota, please. But Sawyer created a little video, and he wanted to share that with you. We'll hit play here, and then we'll wrap it up.
Go. Hi, Rochester School Board. I'm Sawyer Hansen in 9th grade at Mayo High School, and I'm part of the Unified program.
And my name is Bart Hansen. I'm Sawyer's dad, and we are so ecstatic that he's part of the Unified team, and it's made this transition to high school amazing. And what are the things you like most about the Unified team?
We play games, eat breakfast, play games, and you can see friends, and you can go to the homecoming dance. We eat pizza, take pictures, and dance.
And the group is made up of tremendous adults, but even more amazing students. They include Sawyer and make things a reality, like going to the homecoming dance, which he would not have done without the Unified Club. Go Mayo!
Go Mayo!
All right, so we'll wrap up, and I wrap it up with this.
Go.
We are looking to grow the program into other high schools. Right now, we're working strongly with John Marshall and Century. We're working to try to get into more elementaries and middle schools. And in all honesty, we're going to need the entire school board's support in helping make that happen, because we realize the impact that it's having. Not only our gen ed students, our special ed students, but also their families. Okay? We want to transform the lives of students beyond reading, writing, math skills. We want them to, when they go to the grocery store and get their groceries bagged, maybe someone with special needs, that they take the time to learn that person's name. That they take the time to say hello to the person. That they start to learn that value of that character while they're in high school, and Unified has done that. So you're all going to be receiving an invitation from Penny and Violet to join us for Unified Club. We would openly invite you guys to come Thursday mornings. We do Unified Club, we do Unified classes, we do Unified events, but our club, you're going to hear us before you walk in the doors of the high school. You're going to hear the music, and when you see it, we're going to be spread out in the halls. We're going to be throwing axes, beanbags, flying drones. We're going to be doing race cars. We're going to be doing Uno. You will lose in Mario Kart if you show up. But we expect you to come and give it your all, and it's okay if you lose at Mario Kart. Nobody will ever tell. But we would invite you to come experience it firsthand so you can see what a difference it's made. Superintendent McKell's been there. He can speak firsthand. He's seen the impact of this program, and we'd invite you all to come join us. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and extend the time here just to kind of share the story as we try to grow this throughout the district. Okay?
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Also, tomorrow is our Unity Day, which is we're trying to get everybody to wear orange to promote inclusion for kids with and without special needs. So if you guys want to join us in wearing orange, we'd really appreciate that. So we know it's not a common color, but just, yeah. So
any questions before we wrap up? Yes.
What time on Thursday mornings?
8:20.
8? Yeah, if you want to get there before the moment of silence, show up at about 8:15. But by 8:20, you're going to be asking, do you have any earplugs? Do you yes. But we'll get you invited. Other questions?
Director Barlow.
Not so much a question, but an observation. Andrea, there's nothing wrong with being authentic, and so I appreciate the emotion you showed and the passion. As I look to you as RPS employees, what a blessing. I mean, we as a board, the superintendent, those responsible for having hired you and supported you, you're what makes RPS RPS. And the students, thank you so much for being among those 17,000 plus students that we have. And because of what you're sharing out, the future is very bright. Okay, and to hear you talk about you're looking beyond yourselves, or not just at yourselves, but you're willing to see perhaps those you didn't previously see before, but you do see them differently now. That is so important in the world we live in today. So thank you so much for sharing your stories.
Yes. Oh, Director Cook?
Well, thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you also for clearly stating the opportunity to do more in our district. I have 4 kids in RPS, and it is so easy for me to imagine really all of my kids enjoying a program like this, both as Gen Ed students and as and for some of them, you know, as part of the Unified group. I'm just struck by this program that started on the initiative of a student and goes back to at least 2011, according to the Skyward records, right?
Well,
and
considered a TA at the time.
and is still so obviously driven by student leadership. So I guess my question for the co-presidents here, high school, I know it seems like a long time, but it's actually so brief. And to have maintained that student-driven leadership required a lot of handing over of the torch to make this culture sustained at Mayo among the students. If I could ask you to reflect quickly on how that has been done. How is it that each group of upperclassmen that have seen the value in this program have passed that torch of leadership on to the next set? Could you offer any reflections on what has made that work at Mayo for the last over 10 years?
Yeah, so obviously there's something special about Unified Club, and I think that's probably what drives it. There's something there that's not in, like, and I was talking to Mr. Thomas the other day, I was looking at like all the posters and, you know, the school of all the different clubs, like Marine Biology Club or Carb Club or all the different types of clubs, but Unified Club is a club where everybody can go to. Like these different clubs, only if you're interested in that, or only if you apply to fit in this certain mold, then you can go to that club. But Unified Club, everybody goes to that club, right? And I think that's something special about it. And this year we've started doing more leadership. So I guess in the past we haven't done as organized leadership, but this year we've started like with different groups. So we have like a social media team, and we have, you know, a new member coordinator team that like check up with the new members and like invite them back. And so I think that's been helpful, and you know, giving everybody something to do and having everybody help, and I think that's been good to have all the tasks be, I don't know, handed over and stuff.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and the honor is well deserved. I think one of the most important things you do is you make students who may have been invisible visible, and not just there, but part of your lives. And that is a selfless and lesson that we all can learn from you. We appreciate your efforts, your long-term, and we'll see you Thursday mornings.
You got that.
We're
right?
on it.
Okay.
We're on it.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
If you ever have any follow-up questions, feel free to send me an email at any time.
We will.
Okay.
A round of applause, please.
Yes, thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a recognition of National School Bus Safety Week. This is a great opportunity to review for our community some key reminders. When a school bus's red lights are flashing and the stop arm is extended, drivers must slow down and come to a complete stop. This is not a suggestion, it's the law. Yellow flashing lights indicate the bus is preparing to stop or load or unload children. This is when motorists should begin to slow down and prepare to stop their vehicles. Motorists may begin moving only when the red flashing lights are turned off, the stop arm is withdrawn, and the bus begins to move. Drivers are also reminded to respect the school bus loading and unloading areas called the danger zone. Specifically, this is any side of the bus where the bus driver can't see the child, and therefore the child is in the most danger. School bus riders and their parents and caregivers rely on the other drivers on the road to follow the law and keep everyone safe. Slow down and be aware of school buses and children gathering at bus stops as you travel the area's roads. Our next item is board member updates. Does any board member have updates from committees or any events or other information to share? Director Marvin.
This morning, our student school board members, our high school student school board members met in this room. We had about 30 representatives. These kids are chosen by their high schools to represent their student body. And we began the day. Sarah Louise Henry is the staff person who is the heart and soul of this operation. We started today with Dr. Piquel, who came in and met with the students and reviewed 10 of the initiatives that our board and our district is looking at this year, and asked them to discuss those, explain to them what they involve, to discuss those and then determine which ones they think that the student voice might have the most impact on, which ones were they the most interested in really studying and getting involved with this year. We talked about the difference between student council or student government, which is very important, and every high school has a group of kids who kind of organize events at their high school, and student school board, which operates with the school board and on district issues. From now on, luckily, there will be a student here giving the report about what happened rather than me. But these are amazing young people, and Sarah Louise and I and the superintendent really look forward to working with them this year.
Any other reports? Anybody else want to report on our skip visit to John Adams? Nope, my turn. Okay. So we had our skip visit to John Adams Middle School last week. And again, it was a great opportunity for us to see the strategy that John Adams is using to implement its goals. They shared with us their school continuous improvement plan, and we visited a number of classrooms. And also, we visited a resource room. I have to make sure I have it right. Their pause den. And a student can ask to visit the pause den if they're feeling overwhelmed or if they feel they need a break. But what I really appreciated with the approach is they have to give a specific reason and how they're feeling when they first arrive. And then they also survey them on what do they use when they're there. Do they sit and talk to someone? Do they listen to music? Do they do a puzzle? Do they do coloring? What is it that they sort of seek out to, address whatever issue that they're having, so that they know that they have what the students really want to help them in the space. And it was also a great, warm, and welcoming space that I'd be happy to go to in any middle of the day when I'm having a moment. But again, we got to see the dedication of the teachers and the excitement of the students. We had students working on a Zello project. We had students in one class who were working on a budgeting project where they were down to their last $1,000, and they had to figure out whether they were going to seek out a job or how they were going to budget to get over this hump. And it just showed the different kinds of teaching and learning that's happening. So these monthly skip visits just continue to show how committed our schools are to our continuous improvement plan and what they're doing to make them happen. So, Director McLaughlin.
I'd like to add on to that because I was part of that skip visit as well, and what I really took away is we visited one of the reading specialists, and I think where it made the most impact for me is that with the district doing the multi-tier systems of support, we could really see that in action in that classroom and how it helps the students directly. So that initiative, I think, is, and seeing that one of the reasons I wanted to go to John Adams is to see how that was working in our literacy development in the middle school level, at the secondary level now that it's rolling out there. And it was important to see that it's very effective, that was so impressive. The one thing I did take away, though, is that it hadn't even dawned on me that the students in middle school who need help with reading, they really struggle with finding books that are relevant to them, but at their reading level. So that was just eye-opening to me, that I didn't even think through that, you know, they don't want little kids' books. They want things that are interesting to them, and that's a challenge. So if anyone has resources or ideas to add to that, I think that would be helpful. I also saw that it was, one of the things the principal said to us is that the way that they did get resources for the books that they are using in there is through the redesign of the balanced budget model, that they have resources now that they wouldn't necessarily have had to dedicate to something that was so important for that room, to have things that are attractive to those students, and those dollars are being used wisely at John Adams. So good to see all those things fitting together.
And I also wanted to talk about, I know Director Marvin and I attended, I don't know if any other board members attended on the other days, but we've been participating in helping students at JM prepare for their pitch day. So in a class, there are groups of students who are developing business plans and business models for a business that they, today, at the Chateau Theater, did their final pitch to the judges. And I understand that some winners were chosen, but I don't know who they were. But it was great. I got to go 2 out of the 3 weeks, and we were their coaches on their ideas and their presentations, their PowerPoints, their graphics, you know, whatever. And it was just great to see the evolution over the 2 weeks. And, you know, these kids were getting like 3 or 4 coaches right in a row. Who knows if we were all telling them the same thing. But they sat, interacted with us, talked to us, and it was funny because at the opening of the pitch day today, one of the teachers was talking to the kids and said, you know, your judges are here. And, you know, sometimes adults, they don't really know, they're not necessarily comfortable talking to high school students. You know, they're not used to it. Let me tell you, these high school students made it comfortable to talk to them. They all did such a great job with their final pitches today. And it was really exciting to see how invested they were in sticking with it. I asked one of them today if they were going to be glad that all of the stress was over. And they said, yep, they're going to take a nap 8th hour because they're going to be glad that this is over, because it was a lot of work. So congratulations to all of them and to the teachers for putting this on. This is a really great event every year.
And apologies to the 8th hour teachers.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Our next agenda item is our consent agenda, items 5.1 through 511. Would any board member like any item removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration?
Move approval.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda has been approved. Our next agenda item is our focus topic, attendance data and initiatives update. Superintendent Piquel.
Thank you, Chair Nathan and board members. I see a number of my colleagues coming on up, so I'll give them a moment to join us. This presentation is one that I think you've seen previews of in a number of other board meetings, in which the other work that we're doing is obviously and powerfully influenced by the degree to which students are in school and in class. And so this is an overview of a work in progress that we're going to get a vision of from both the central office level and from 2 schools. The interesting thing about this presentation, just board members to be really transparent, I have a number of colleagues who, as superintendents who I don't think would schedule a presentation at a board meeting with content this detailed. Because the concern, to be candid, is that you are a governance board and you set the direction for the district at the policy level. And as you're going to see, this presentation that we're going to hear goes way down into the details. I personally disagree with the idea that you can be the governing board of the school district and not get down into the details. I've always been very aware that this board, while being very versed in the specifics, as we just heard about from the directors who talked about our skip visits, is aware of the details, you always, at least in my experience, make your decisions at that policy level. There was a colleague superintendent who I talked about this a while back, and he said, what you want is a board who are crop dusters. I thought, well, what does that mean? They're flying up here where they're making the decisions, but they dip way down close to the field to learn what's really going on, but they pull back up, as opposed to getting so deep into what is our job as administrators and teachers and others. So as I was talking with Angie McAndrews about this presentation and the work that she's been leading since she joined our central office team, I said, yep, it's time to let the board see the complexity of the specifics, and then it's time to have some leaders from our building levels who are gonna help us understand how it plays out. I do so with the confidence that you've already made the policy decision to include consistent attendance as one of the performance measures that will drive our school improvement plans and that will drive our new strategic plan. So you've voted for this unanimously as a critical priority for the next at least 3 to 4 years in Rochester Public Schools. So this is a snapshot of the specifics. So let me turn it over to you to introduce yourselves to the board and then take us down into those weeds.
Yeah, thank you for having us tonight and for being interested in learning more about the topic of attendance, because it's certainly something we've invested a lot of time in over the last couple of years. And thank you so much to these two colleagues for joining. I asked them to be here representing their schools, but also a variety of perspectives. They've both been very involved in attendance for a very long time at the elementary, middle, and high school level. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves just to make sure everybody knows who you are?
Hello, everyone. I'm Angela Rogers. I'm one of the assistant principals at John Marshall.
And I'm Craig Schneider, assistant principal at Jefferson Elementary.
And Craig also served as assistant principal and oversaw attendance at Kellogg, so he has the middle school perspective too, so can speak to any questions that you might have when we get finished with our presentation. And Mona challenged me to make sure that I did not extend beyond 15 minutes, so I'm going to do a really good job in that right now. All right, so I felt like the most important thing to do was to start with some definitions, because I think especially as chronic absenteeism becomes kind of a buzz across the nation, there's confusion. I think that confusion was highlighted for us a couple weeks ago when we sent our first text message to families, and there was some confusion about what was being reported and what wasn't being reported in that messaging, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. But the definitions we felt like were important for you to consider. The first is average daily attendance, and this is the total days or periods that a student is in attendance divided by the number of days that they are enrolled. And I think that when we think of attendance, this is kind of what our brain defaults to, but that's actually not how consistent attendance is defined. So consistent attendance is defined as a student who is present for more than 90% of the time. So a student is consistently attending if they attend more than 90%. This is true of excused and unexcused absences, and the importance in that is that we see that students, whether they're excused or not, are missing out on important learning, and that impacts their future successes. And so whether excused or not, 90% is the target. And for perspective, I believe we have 168 student days, so that would mean a student could miss up to 16.8 days of school and still be consistently attending. So that by no means is perfect attendance. It definitely has allowances for vacations and illnesses and things like that. 16.8 days at the end of a school year seems like a lot of time for a student to be out of school, but that would be 90% if they attended all but 16.8 days. Chronic absenteeism is the reverse of that. So students who are attending less than 90% of the time or missing more than 10% of the time, excused or unexcused. And again, those are both included because they impact student success. Truancy, I think, is what we typically people kind of default to thinking about truancy when they're considering chronic absenteeism. But truancy is unexcused absences or absent without good reason by definition. We actually have 2 codes in Rochester Public Schools that are considered truant codes, and those would be unexcused absences. And then we have a special code that is the M code. And M stands for missed significant instruction. That actually was born at the secondary level even prior to COVID. It's been around for quite some time. It was really kind of the function of communicating
when students were in class for some portion of time but had missed a significant amount of class. And so that is defined at the secondary level as kids who miss more than 5 minutes of class, but they were there at some point during the period, whereas unexcused would be not attending the class at all. That is actually, the M code is actually now used at the elementary level, and that is new this year. And that was a conversation that we had with elementary principals trying to identify if that was a priority for them or not, and they felt like it was a more accurate way to represent attendance by including M as a code that they would use. And then it's also important to note that there are two different ways that we count attendance in Rochester Public Schools. At the elementary level, because kids are typically with the same teacher throughout the day, they have what they consider 2 attendance periods, morning and afternoon, and we have set the definition as morning being the time before lunch and afternoon as being the time after lunch. So if a student is gone in the morning, they would be attending 50% of the day, or if they're gone in the afternoon, 50%. Whereas at the secondary, that attendance is calculated by period. That will vary a little bit from school to school depending on how the schedule is created. So for example, Dakota has a schedule that has block scheduling this year, so their period structure looks a little different than maybe at JA. And JM has, different number of periods, but generally speaking, 6, 7, or 8 periods, depending on how their schedule is constructed. Then we thought maybe it would be important just to give you kind of an overview of the state of attendance. So I thought I would start at the nation, like kind of across the nation, then at the state level, and then what is true for us here in Rochester Public Schools. So across our nation, there are kind of 3 big causes of chronic absenteeism: wellness concerns, barriers that are not just student barriers, but family barriers, and then issues that students encounter with the school environment. So for wellness, physical health, but also mental health, and I think that is a consideration that we see quite frequently here in Rochester Public Schools, and sometimes access to care, although I think we have a lot of different ways for students to have some of those wellness needs met in Rochester. Barriers including poverty, transportation, food insecurity, family responsibilities, and student mobility. And then the school environment, not only disengagement, not feeling safe or comfortable, or a sense of belonging with their school. I think a lot of times right now the conversation kind of defaults to, well, prior to the pandemic. And I think that there were, I think we've recovered from a lot of the pre-pandemic kinds of things, but I thought that it was important to this conversation to at least acknowledge that there are post-pandemic factors that may or may not attribute to some of our consistent attendance issues. So there's a number of them listed there, but specifically some of them that we would see would be some of the engagement issues or some avoidance, and then some of the stamina that kids experience too. In Minnesota, obviously this is a concern because we were one of 12 districts that was selected for a state pilot, and the state recognizes that this is a concern. The idea of the legislative pilot was there aren't really great solutions, and there isn't really a great answer for how we address the chronic absenteeism issues. And so the legislature has charged 12 districts to try some things and see what we might identify as reasonable strategies that will move the needle in terms of consistent attendance. With those 12 districts, we have monthly collaboration. We also have a few of them that we have developed pretty good partnerships with, just sharing ideas and troubleshooting things that we're experiencing locally, specifically Northfield and then District 191, that's Burnsville, Eagle, and Savage. And so we have a pretty close working relationship with those 2 districts just to share ideas. And then we also have received a lot of support, not just from the Department of Education and Compass, but also from the University of Minnesota, the Minneapolis Foundation, Ed Allies, which is an advocacy organization, and a few other groups that we have been communicating with pretty regularly, just trying to learn from one another and to figure out, are things that we're seeing unique to Rochester, or are there things that we can learn from other partners? So when we consider kind of the national and the state themes, we want to identify what are the things that maybe we experience locally here in Rochester. And I would say of the things that I shared in the previous 2 slides, these are the themes that we really see here in Rochester most prominently. I think in a lot of cases when you would look up what types of things impact truancy and chronic absenteeism. A lot of schools would identify transportation. We don't really see that in terms of the students that we have not attending school regularly. And so that would kind of set us apart from other districts and their experiences. We see more mental health, family responsibilities, taking care of kids, working to help provide for the family, student mobility, disengagement, and then misconceptions about the impact of attendance. And by that I mean parents not understanding really what the outcome is, or what the negative outcome could be for a student who doesn't attend regularly. And then post-pandemic wise, we really see that mental health and academic gaps have led to decreased stamina, avoidance, and decreased engagement. We started our work last year pretty intensely with some systems work, and one of the things that we focused on was cleaning up some coding. We did an initial round of kind of simplifying our codes in December over the winter break last year, and then we did another cleanup in June, and that was mostly a function of wanting to make sure that our data from last year was a really clean baseline for us. There was a new legislation introduced last spring that really clarified that anytime students are being supervised or instructed by people that we pay as a district, that kids should be exempt from that counting against their consistent attendance rate, and that was not something that was in place before. So for example, in the past, if a student was working in a restorative circle with a group of kids that they had a conflict with, they would be counted out of class, and that would count against their consistent attendance rate. Now that's considered exempt. So we have added this S code that says they were staff supervised at the time that they participated in that activity, and so that does not count against their consistent attendance rate. And that's new across the state of Minnesota, but we felt like it was important for us to go back and correct our data before we had our year-end report, so that the baseline from this last year would be comparable as we move forward, especially because we have to report our numbers to the legislature twice a year and make sure that they see what our progress is based on those pilot funds. So we went back and we made all those conversions in June by adding the S code. And then we wanted to just be sure that we were real clear about which codes were excused, unexcused, or exempt. In Minnesota, there's quite a variation in terms of codes and how those are interpreted at the state level. And so Kate Morrow, who is our attendance and truancy coordinator, she is also participating in the state advisory committee, trying to provide some guidance to the legislature and to the Department of Education about these codes and calculations. Then we looked at calculations for consistent attendance, and we've talked a lot about day versus period, making sure that we're aligned. Elementaries are calculated the same as secondaries. We had Peter Christofferson, our data warehouse manager, has created dashboards that have helped us identify current attendance data kind of at our fingertips instead of generating long PDF reports from Skyward that were really cumbersome and created some inefficiencies in our buildings. And then we have problem solved some things like kids who have multiple enrollments, and we were getting weird reporting things for kids. Maybe they're at C-Tech and Century, and so their attendance was kind of being misreported there, or kids that have some unique programming, like they're at Fernbrook for part of a day and then enrolled for part of a day, and there were lots of those kinds of situations that we've never really spent the time looking at, so work to clean those up. Also with calculations, it's important to note that the state report card that's posted on the Department of Education website and often referred to as the North Star calculations or the North Star reporting, it has a year delay for consistent attendance data. So when you look at the report card right now, it shows you MCA data from just this last school year, 24-25. But when they updated the attendance data the same time they updated the MCA data, that's actually a year older. So that data just shows 23-24 data right now. And so it's hard sometimes to be able to make those comparisons. Also, there is not a standardization of how schools code or calculate their attendance. They just report what they report, and that's what is calculated into the North Star rate. So we're also providing guidance on that at the state advisory committee level. For this, for the 24-25 school year, we were making sure that we had some standardization across our buildings. And Angie and Craig will be able to speak to their attendance teams. We have a handbook that has kind of standardized processes for all buildings so that there's one place to go to have a consistent answer about how we respond to things attendance-wise. The Olmsted County partnerships, we really have depended a lot on the partnerships with not just the county, but also the county attorney's office, and those relationships have been very important to us. We've worked together to clarify procedures and share feedback about what our data tells us and what it doesn't tell us about how well our truancy processes are working. And then Kate and I specifically have been doing a lot of learning, reading, attending workshops, presenting at some workshops, a book study between the district, the county, and Three Rivers Restorative Justice, and then sharing ideas with other thought partners. So here's some data for you to look at, but I just want to caution you that some of this is the North Star calculation, so what is posted on the Department of Education website, but because that data is delayed a whole year, the most recent data is something that's in-house calculated. So that might be something that when it's reported later, we might see some slight adjustments in that. So this first calculation, you can see Rochester is the blue, and then Minnesota average is the orange, and then the internal calculation for last year was the 64.9%. So that means 64.9% of our students attended more than 90% of the time. That's that consistent attendance rate piece. When we look at that consistent attendance rate for free and reduced eligible students, you can see the numbers here. Rochester compared to the state average. And again, we don't have this calculation. One of the things that we are working on is a local dashboard that would be able to compare same days and times so that we would be able to see these numbers pretty accurately for last year, but we do not have that at our fingertips right now. These are numbers for students who are serviced with IEPs in their buildings. This is attendance rates for multilingual learners. And then I apologize for the print on this particular slide, but I feel like the graphical representation is probably the most important thing. These are side-by-side ethnicities, and it's RPS compared to Minnesota in each of those categories. So you can see the ethnicities listed across the bottom. The last one is other indigenous peoples, and that was a ethnicity code that was just added a year ago, which is the reason that we don't see the data for 21-22 or 22-23. So our current action, we've spent a lot of time talking about social norm theory. One of the things that I did last fall was spend a lot of time learning from an organization called Everyday Labs, and they have spent a lot of time creating what they call nudges, and that is like sending notifications or reminders to parents about what their child's attendance rate is and why it's important. And so we have started that this year. Social norm theory is the idea that behaviors are influenced by the perceptions that we have about what's typical. And a lot of times our families don't have anything to compare it to because they only have a couple kids, and they don't understand in the grand scheme of things how their child's attendance compares. So we've used this idea of social norm theory for a few different things. Some of the tier 1 things that we've done this year, communication, just trying to illustrate the importance of attendance to families. We gathered feedback from our interpreters with the help of Miguel Benjamin twice last spring, just trying to understand what the gaps are that we have, especially for families that have communication gaps with our buildings. We sent a July newsletter to families and gave them last year in review so they could see their child's consistent attendance rate for the whole year last year. We did fall training with administrators and clerical staff, sent a back to school newsletter, and then have started monthly text messages. The elementary calculations are, again, calculated by half day and then secondary by period. And we've established the social norm or the attendance norm for what is consistent attendance in a child's building. I think we had, you guys could probably attest to this too, but there were quite a few phone calls after we sent our initial text message. I think that we were thinking that our communication in July and then again in August was enough to set the stage for those text messages, but in hindsight, that probably wasn't enough. So we'll be doing a little extra communication to give parents a heads up on what that data means when they get it in the next month. We have actually implemented talking points attendance lines in all of our buildings so that there's two-way communication in a family's preferred language, which has been awesome. We've gotten a lot of great feedback, not just from families, but also from our clerical staff about the ease of that program. And then we have a weekly cross-department collaboration with our technology department and with our data folks so that we're all on the same page of making sure that we're providing accurate information to our buildings as quickly as possible. We have building dashboards underway and district dashboards that are still evolving. And then we have some policy alignment that we have coming up at some point in the not too distant future. So Kathy, I'll be connecting with you on that. Here's some more data for you to take a look at. This graph is by grade, but please note that kindergarten is at the bottom and there was not a way for any of us to figure out how to get that in a different order. So, but blue and green indicates consistent attendance. We identify these a little bit differently. The green is 90 to 95% attending and 96 to 100 is blue. The idea would be the kids that are in the green are the ones who are maybe getting close to that level, so we just want to keep an eye on those rates. And the kids that are in the red are the ones who are very, very chronically absent. Here's another graph. This is a building-specific graph, and the way that this dashboard works, buildings can just click on the 95 number and that will populate a list of who those 95 kids are so that they have that at their fingertips instead of sorting through Skyward reports for that information. This is another building. This is a middle school specifically. I did, oh no, that one isn't updated. There was a disconnect, I think, Kathy, that you had noted, but that update's not on here. So. And then when buildings get these reports, they basically can sort by any type of metric they want. So if they want to look at just kids who are unexcused, just kids who are chronically tardy, kids who have the consistent attendance rate issues, kids who are excelling and they want to be able to honor that in celebration, that's also right at their fingertips. Then for Tier 2 interventions, Kate is working closely with Willie Tipton on trying to prevent our 15-day drops, and those are, by law, we have to drop students after 15 consecutive days of absence. I think that initially was like a financial safety net for the state, so we are not collecting funding on kids that we're not educating, but that sometimes feels pretty aggressive to families that their child is getting dropped when maybe they're dealing with things at home. So we've tried to communicate that that's not optional. And that we're required to do that. Part of the way that they're doing that is doing outreach with the building and then with the families at the 10-day mark so that we try to do that before we get to the 15. I already talked a little bit about the partnership with our county, and that has been great. We actually have, at the secondary level, we have truancy summits in June, July, and August. And then we meet quarterly during the school year just to make sure that we're calibrated and provide feedback to one another. We've never done that at the elementary before, but that will be starting next week or the week after. We'll be starting with our first elementary collaboration. So we're excited about that. We surveyed elementaries and said, would that be beneficial? And I think 95% of them said, yes, please arrange those meetings. So we're excited to get that underway. Another thing that we're doing through our pilot is the Freshman on Track program. And we have 4 high schools participating, Century, JM, Mayo, and the ALC. We took a team of 14 people in June to do some grounding and learning on the Freshman on Track initiative, which is essentially just early warning, an early warning system that includes attendance but also behavior and grades. And then we went back in October and did some observation at Chicago Public Schools to see how this program has been impactful to their graduation rates by early intervention for 9th grade students. The freshman success teams meet twice a month, and they have a different, similar to the attendance dashboard, but have their own dashboard to help them identify who those kids are. So here's an example of that, and this compares consistent attendance rate also with failing course grades, so it's quick and easy for them to identify who those students are. And then I think last but not least is the Uplift program, which is a pilot that we're doing at Kellogg this year. Kellogg actually is a grant recipient for restorative practice work through the state, and so that felt like a easy match for us when we were looking for somebody to pilot this initiative. Instead of students getting referred to the county when they are truant, instead they would get referred a little sooner than a county referral. So instead of at 80% consistent attendance, they get referred at 84%. So the Three Rivers has a little bit more time to work with families, and they do family outreach. Parents have to opt in. They have to sign an agreement that we can share the data about their attendance back and forth. And then they have, it's a 9-week intervention, but 6 weeks of explicit instruction, some family education, some circles talking about what are the attendance barriers. We'd seen a lot of research that indicated sometimes talking about truancy with a neutral party feels a lot safer for kids and families. And so that was kind of where that idea came from with Three Rivers. And so that is underway. I think at present they have 11 referrals, and 9 of those 11 families have opted in to participate in that program through Kellogg and Three Rivers. So that is truancy and consistent attendance in a nutshell, and we'll take your questions, and hopefully Angie and Craig can tackle all those for you.
Director Workman.
So I have a question on some of these definitions.
Sure.
Trying to understand that. So consistent attendance is 90% of the time, so 16.4 days absent is still within that 90%.
Mm-hmm.
Chronic absenteeism obviously is the inverse of that, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
So my question comes to the truancy. Absent without good reason. I have several questions. Absent without good reason, is that any unexcused absence, or is there a difference between an unexcused absence that's a good reason versus an unexcused absence that's not a good reason? And then finally, on the drop, it used to be that truants were considered, it was considered truancy if it was 15 consecutive days that were missed. Because otherwise, if you miss 15 days, you're truant, but yet the threshold for 90% is 16.4 days. So that the question is around what is good reason, since I'm assuming that these are all unexcused, versus,
Yeah, do you want to address the unexcused stuff, and I can tackle the 15 days?
Yeah. So parents would call in, and for example, if their child was ill or they're going to go on a vacation, a lot of those are excused absences, and a lot of it comes down to the communication of the family. They would call in and provide a reason. And then, like you talked about, unexcused, where a family wouldn't call in, and a lot of times our truancy teams were looking for the number of unexcused absences and trying to find out why that student wasn't in school or wasn't attending school. So that's a good reason, is kind of really looking at the reason why they weren't in school, and then really narrowing it down. I think now sending out the letters and looking at attendance rates is really helpful, because it's narrowing down the amount of excused absences to ensure that students are in school so they're able to learn or receive their education.
I have a couple follow-ups. So if a student who is consistently in school has missed 15 days with excused absences and 1 unexcused absence, that would still keep them within the consistent range, correct? Because it says on the slide that
I think there's
consistent.
2 different things to consider. So the 15 consecutive day drop, it doesn't matter if it's excused or not. If we have not seen a student and provided
Right.
education for 15 days, that's a drop no matter what. And the consistent attendance rate counts excused or unexcused. So if a child is gone for 15 days over the course of the year, even if they were all unexcused, but they attended everything else, yes, they would, by the end of the year, they would still be consistently attending.
So at what point do they fall into the truant bucket?
So below the 90% mark would be chronically absent, and we do truancy referrals at the 80% mark.
Director Murphy.
When you talked about the program you visited in Chicago and Freshmen on Track, in your presentation, thank you by the way, you mentioned a number of the things you do when kids seem to be on the verge of having poor attendance, contacting their parents and that type of thing. Were there other interventions that Chicago used or that you learned about that you're now using here or anticipating using now, specifically for first year, for ninth graders?
I think our freshman on track teams are working based on whatever the individual student need is. A lot of times that starts out with connecting them with whoever their trusted or preferred adult is to identify what are the things that are not going well. In some cases at JM, for example, they are looking at kids who are consistently attending but are failing classes. That has been a big priority for them. And instead of their freshman team looking at all of those kids as a sum total, their freshman on track lead, which is Emily Elson, she has been divvying up that data based on what classes kids are failing and then going to PLCs to speak with teachers. So it might be, 11 kids are failing English with a particular teacher, so let's provide that list to the teacher and talk about what are the things that you can do and what are the things that maybe somebody else needs to support, maybe somebody who has a stronger relationship with a student. In some cases, they're doing family outreach. I think what we have learned from the University of Chicago is that it's important to have a really clear system on how we identify kids early and that we don't wait for kids to fail classes, but that just like attendance, the intervention and those connections with kids, the need varies wildly between students and between buildings. And so they are working to figure out what are the things that are producing the best results. And I think they've only had 3 freshmen on track meetings so far in their buildings. So we're very, very early in the process, but trying to figure out if the best way is through a PLC, if it's having a counselor, an equity specialist, or somebody meet with a student and make those connections to identify what the root problem is.
Dr. McLaughlin.
In my day job, in some of the different roles I've played, either with young people or with families, the topic of bullying has come up in the idea of being absent from school. That didn't seem to come up on any of your slides talking about the reasons. Does that fit into things like the unsafe conditions, or would that be something different?
I definitely think that, when we talk about disengagement academically and relationally, that's a piece of it. Do you want to speak to your experience with that, Jan?
I think the overarching most important thing that we can do is making sure that we connect our kids with a trusted adult. And I think if they have that person at school, that's the first step into getting them back. So who can we talk to? Who can we get them connected with? What are those barriers? If it's bullying, what's going on? How can we help you so that we can get you back in? If it's one class at a time, we'll take that. And then we can look at more pieces. Do we need to change your schedule? Do we need you to, have this advisory teacher? Do you need Miss Elson for whatever it might be? So we're really tailoring it individually so that we can address what that barrier is to getting them to school.
So when I look at, and thank you for all this information and data, I think before I start, I want to say to the superintendent's point where we started, I really appreciated that you shared the handbook with us. Because it put a lot of the other things that you had in context, but, and the handbook is available in Assembly if anybody wants to read it. But I think it really points out that, we're often called to task for our students' test scores. But we can't help a student learn to read or do math if they're not here. And it was very clear from that handbook that there is absolutely a village that is out there working to get these kids to our schools, and then what we're doing internally with the engagement and with the climate and what you just talked about with the trusted adult to make them want to stay. So when I look at the numbers, our most consistent attendance has both excused and unexcused. Are most of the absences we're looking at unexcused? Or is there a pattern of, where parents are just, nope, there's just a lot of reasons that parents are giving to keep their kids out of school, and they fall into the categories that in our policy right now are excused?
I actually asked Kate this afternoon if she could quantify this for us so that I could share this with you, and then I skipped right over it when I got to that slide. So at the elementary level, for every 5.4 excused absences, we have 1 unexcused absence. So a little more than 5 to 1. At the middle school, for every 3.2 excused absences, we have 1 unexcused absence. And at the high school level, for every 1.3 excused absences, we have 1 unexcused. So that varies quite differently at different levels. And I think a big piece of that is parent engagement in education. Sometimes the older kids get, the less parents are even aware if their kid is skipping class. Also, it's more likely that a student would be at like skipping a class during the day. They're at school but not attending a class. Maybe they can't face the fact that they're very far behind in math class, so they're not going to math class, and they might not go for 5, 6, 7 times. And we see those patterns in attendance teams, and then somebody knows to like connect with the kid and try to figure out what's going on. And sometimes the teachers teaching those classes don't know that the kids are in school otherwise, they're just not coming to their class. So I think that it's pretty telling, though, that we go from 5 to 3 to almost a 1-to-1 at the high school level. And, you know, parents are a lot more engaged at the elementary level and a lot more in tune to, like, calling in and reporting, oftentimes because if they're keeping their child home for the day, they have to be home also. But I think that the more independent kids get, the less connected to their attendance families get.
Right. And then you also mentioned the M code. Can you tell us how, you know, if a student's absent from school for elementary, the first half or the second half of the day or the whole day or a period, that, you know, that's a concrete block. But how do you handle calculations with the M codes where they may, you know, have a collection of M's over a series of days? How does that calculate into our days or our consistent attendance calculation?
Sure. Do you guys each want to talk about what an M looks like at your building? And I can talk about
Sure, you wanna go first?
Sure. So at our secondary level, as Angie mentioned before, it's going to be if they were not, so tardy is up to 5 minutes, and then the M would be they attended, but it was not tardy. So they made an appearance. Maybe they came for 20 minutes and then spent some other time in the bathroom or in the hallways or whatever, whatnot. But when we first implemented the M, the parents were saying, you know, well, my kid says they were there, because they were typically, you know, they were getting marked inconsistently. Some teachers were saying they were present, some were saying they were you. So it just gave everybody that same universal platform for saying, well, the kids showed up, but they weren't there the entire time. So it really just gave clarity to the teachers, to the students, to the parents. They're attending, but not the entire time. So they might be missing the core instruction. They might be missing, and that's maybe why they're struggling in that class. So it really tells a piece of the story as to what may be going on.
And at the elementary level, it's that same concept where if they're absent for the first 5 minutes, it's tardy, and then beyond that, it's missing. 15, excuse me. Sorry, I was thinking still middle school, yeah. So then it's that missing significant instruction. So if they came maybe an hour late, we'd mark them with an M, and then our attendance team is looking at the number of M's to trying to find out why they might be late. So there might be a reason. Transportation was brought up, so that might be one issue, or the family's having a hard time waking up in the morning. So we're trying to, other interventions like buying an alarm clock for a student, for a family, could be a barrier for them. So really looking at when they come, and that M can be really helpful for that piece of it.
We do have one elementary school too, because of, well, maybe not just one, but one that I'm very familiar with, that like they have a lot of traffic at the end of the day, so parents like to pick their kids up half hour, 45 minutes early. Well, instruction goes on till the end of the day. We have a lot of learning that can happen in the last 30 to 45 minutes. And so even at the end of the day, if a kid is picked up without good reason or consistently without good reason, that would be marked as an M instead of that being excused. If a child's excused, they go to the dentist and they come in an hour late, then that would be marked as excused when they arrive at the elementary level and at the secondary level. But if they just consistently show up 45 minutes late without any excuse, then that's an M. An M is calculated the same way as an unexcused absence, so that it counts as part of their consistent attendance rate, where a tardy is not. A tardy is exempt from that calculation. It's still noted in the attendance record, but it's not part of the calculation.
So if doing a better job with coding with the M's by the classroom teacher, is that helping? So if a student is supposed to be in class but is not in class, that means they're potentially elsewhere in the building. So is that helping you to develop other interventions for the people who have to address that student who is outside of that class? Does the data collection help, or vice versa? Or?
Yeah, I really do think so, because sometimes it might just be a single class that they're getting the M in, so then we can really dig into what's going on, what can we do. Maybe it's difficult, so hey, during your advisory, let's go work on your math. That's where you're not going a lot of the time. Or it might be a combination of a lot of other things. So I think that M really helps us to figure out what the story is and really hone in on what's going on. Typically in the high school level, you're going to see, I would say, overall like more U's, but if you see the outliers of the M's more often, I think that helps us to really hone in on what we need to focus on.
Dr. Cook?
Ms. McAndrews, this question I think is for you, because I'm sure that you stepped into this leadership role with some views on the causes of chronic absenteeism and what the potential strategies would be to try to address those. And as you've gone through this and looked at the nudges to establish social norms, and I mean, it's just classic University of Chicago stuff, that makes a lot of sense. But have there been surprises or anything that you weren't expecting? Because I certainly have my own ideas, but I'd be really curious, like what you've learned that you weren't expecting on either the root causes or what types of interventions seem like they're going to be, most efficacious.
Well, I have a couple thoughts. The first is, I don't know that there's been anything that's really surprised me. I feel like our buildings all have good practices in place. I think they all do, they individualize as many interventions as they can manage. I think sometimes we have so many kids that are chronically absent that it's hard to intervene for all of them, and that feels very frustrating to our buildings because we want to be able to provide that support. I think that was the reason that we pushed so hard for Tier 1 ideas this year, because obviously there's the saying in education, you can't intervene your way out of a Tier 2 problem. And we definitely have a Tier 2 or Tier 3 chronic absenteeism issue. So, but I don't think any of that surprises me. I think the things that I experienced as a building principal at Kellogg are very true for all of our secondary buildings, like kids with elopement, walking out of class without permission. A lot of it's attributed to peer conflict, an inability to be regulated and be still and have the stamina to get through a class period. Not being able to communicate what their needs are, so they're frustrated, not having the ability and the skills to be able to perform an academic task, so that feels overwhelming and I can't use my words to explain that, so instead I'm gonna walk out. It looks like I won't do what's happening in class, but it's actually that I can't do that. But I think that we see the gamut across all of our buildings in very, very similar ways, so in that regard, that didn't really surprise me at all. I admittedly, I've said this many times, like I had very little to do with attendance when I was at Kellogg unless it was some sort of associated with some sort of behavior issue, because we have assistant principals who kind of take that and manage it. And so that was something I think the problem was a lot bigger than I understood when I stepped into this role. So I think Mr. Schneider had done a great job, and Mr. Woodman before him when I was the principal at Kellogg, in addressing the chronic absenteeism issue, but I think the problem is a lot more significant than I even understood even as a building lead principal. So that would be the piece that surprised me the most, I think.
Thanks.
Dr. Barlow.
I just wanted to say thank you. The superintendent was correct. We've taken out low-level dive, and it seems like we're probably ready to go back where we're supposed to be, but it is I think so important to have a working understanding that goes beyond just terminology, truant, unexcused. We can now have a better, at least I can, understanding what those terms mean, not just individually, but to the district and what we are doing to address them. So thank you for that, and hopefully, I would only wonder what can we as a board perhaps do to undergird or support the effort. More specifically, to the message to the community of attendance being so important.
Right, I was gonna say exactly that. I think just celebrating the message of why we send kids to school, why it's important for them to be here. It's not just so that they can learn math and so that we can intervene if they have a reading deficit, but the social connections, the collaboration experiences that they have, their ways to become resilient and learn how they can bounce back from things that are failures and understand that like there are adults here to help you. There are a lot of reasons that we need kids to be in school, be present, and work through the struggles that they have so that we can help prepare them for all the things that they're going to face later in life. And so I think just making sure that you're celebrating that message that their attendance is important. We do amazing things for kids in Rochester Public Schools every single day. And when kids are gone, it's not without some sort of loss to their skill and their future success.
Thank you.
Dr. Workman?
To build on your analogy, which I was going to use, I think my crop dusting plane is so low that it's landed. What, if any, correlation have you explored between aligning attendance or absences, regardless of whether they're excused or not, because the kid is either there or not there, with test scores, with reading deficits, with, we want third graders to be at grade level for reading. How much correlation, or maybe you don't have the tools to do this yet, is there between the absenteeism and those kinds of data results that we're looking for?
That's actually exactly where the consistent attendance rate, the target of 90% comes from. I mean, there's a lot of research to support at the elementary. Kids are less likely to read by grade level. At the middle school, they're less likely to be successful, and especially in their core content areas, and they're ultimately less likely to graduate on time if they attend less than 90%. And so that's what we've been communicating to families, that's paramount to this concern, is that it's not just that they miss school, but there are ultimately greater losses that they experience down the road if they're not consistently attending. And that 90% mark is not unique to Rochester Public Schools. That is rooted in research that is used by Everyday Labs, by Attendance Works, by Be at School, a variety of different organizations that really focus a lot on the research behind consistent attendance.
So looking at the easy to look at graphs, comparing Rochester with the state of Minnesota, then if we're looking at the consistent attendance overall, then would we expect our rates of proficiency to be around that 65%?
Okay, you would have to talk with Dr. Ruck about making that conclusion.
I don't know. That's a lot. But, I mean, I think if kids aren't there, they're not learning what they need to be learning. And so in order for them to be learning, to be prepared for life outside of school someday, they have to be there. So I think this is just really where we have to start. And I really appreciate all the work that you've done, especially coming here to explain this to us tonight and its importance. And as Director Barlow said, if there's anything that we can do to help really solidify that message to parents about why it's so important for their kids to be there, then, we'll do what we can.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, board members. We appreciate you. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is also a focus topic, our philanthropy strategy. Superintendent McHale.
Thank you, Chair Nathan, board members, for bringing our colleague Denise Moody up. This presentation, board members, is actually the first of what is going to be a series of look-backs at some of the key building blocks of our current strategic plan. And so one of those 15 building blocks has been to build out a philanthropy strategy that Denise has ably been managing previously. I want to say with complete excitement about the presentation Denise is going to give that we had a glitch, and so the timer was not used in the last presentation, and so this is nothing personal, Denise, that we're going to begin using the timer again. And we are always going to use that. So I am so excited about this. As board members are going to see, we have got an extraordinary record, and you have been indispensable in bringing us to this point where we have raised a lot of cash to advance the mission of this district. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm curious about this timer. Like, is it like you're, okay.
In the drawer. Oh, okay, so
Oh.
that's an even bigger, it's an even bigger oversight.
I don't see a timer.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great.
I don't do the timer.
I
You
told
don't
you,
do the
it was- we're being real here, nothing personal.
Okay, well, I better jump right in.
I just,
Okay.
I just thought time stood still while we were talking about that deep.
Well,
dive we
I'm
were
glad
doing.
that felt that way, but my concern, Director McLaughlin, is that it doesn't seem that some reports are timed and others are not.
Yes,
And
I would agree.
so that is why. Thank you. Denise.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I am excited to do this first update that you will have on all of the different building blocks of the strategic plan. As you know, we are working on our next strategic plan, but this is a great time to reflect back on the work that we did since 2021 on our first strategic plan under the leadership of Dr. Backel. And so I'm going to be focusing on increasing our philanthropic support. As we have developed this strategy, we've really kind of identified these three buckets of support. And so donations, advertising, and philanthropy. We are actively working on the area of donations and advertising, and as I've dug into those, we've realized there's a lot of complexity there and a lot of efforts that are still very much in development. We are a little bit farther along on our philanthropy strategy. So I am going to speak about that piece today, and maybe we can come back and talk about those other areas as we are further developed. But just to kind of understand what those three are, donations is really thinking about donations that come into the district. So whether that's through PTSA, direct donations to the district through the Rochester Public Schools Foundation, that's kind of that bucket. The next bucket is around advertising. So thinking about how do we sell advertising on our billboards, through sponsorships. A lot of that is through our activities is where we see a lot of that advertising pieces. The last piece we're going to be talking about is the piece we're going to be talking about today is our philanthropy, which is primarily grants. And so there's a lot of different types of grants that we work with. Federal grants, state grants, there could be foundation grants. We're going to talk about most of our funding that we're going to talk about today has come from state grants or private grants. In addition, there's federal funding, but most of those are awarded as block grants. So we talk about them as grants, they are referred to as grants, but they aren't competitive grants. We're not writing applications in the same way. And so we're going to be talking about more of those competitive grants today. In general, when we think about philanthropy, we want philanthropy to support innovation that's happening in our district. It's helping our schools and our systems support changes in practice and structures. So Angie talked a little bit about restorative practices grant at Kellogg. That's one example, is that we are providing kind of those funds to be able to get something off the ground as we are working to change systems. There are a lot of different ways when we think about and are looking at what grants to pursue. We really want grants to match up with goals that we're creating. We don't want to see a grant and kind of have new shiny object syndrome where we're going to be like, oh, well, let's create a program because there's funding available, right? We want to look at what are the goals that we have, what are the system-wide initiatives, and how can grant funding come alongside to support either a short-term project to kind of get that work going or to provide us kind of some seed money to move forward. We're trying to avoid using grants to pay for ongoing operational expenses because it creates this cliff at the end that if this is an essential part of what we're trying to do, and then we have to think about how to continue to support that ongoing. And so again, we're trying to look for kind of what are those projects and how do we use grant funds to support kind of the startup of things. The other kind of area of grants that we do use, and I'll point out a couple of examples as we go through, is grants that might support things that we're already doing. So one example that I'm working on that's due on Thursday is AED machines is a cardiac response grant. And so we had a routine maintenance that needed to happen to our AED machines already. There's a state of Minnesota grant that will fund $50,000 of AED machines. So it's not necessarily maybe like a big goal that we had, or is it a new project, but it's something that we would otherwise be doing. And so grant funds are able to come along and support that. And I'll point out a couple of examples as we go through the list. So I'm going to go back through kind of just high-level overview of some of the grants that we have received since 2023. This isn't an exhaustive list. These are ones that I've been involved in and are maybe some of the larger amounts. So I think you're familiar with the work, the grant from Chan Zuckerberg that supported deeper learning. We also received 2 Grow Your Own grants that support students and staff and community members interested in the area of teaching, providing scholarships for them. Trauma-informed anti-bias and the non-exclusionary discipline grant focused on professional development around those topics. And then, as you are all aware about our federal school-based mental health grant, this was a grant to allow staff to re-specialize in becoming trained mental health providers, and was the grant that was canceled for the 4th and 5th year by the federal administration. Moving on to FY24, the first 4 there are CLSD grants. And so these were short-term grants that really kicked off our work around the READ Act. So what had happened was the state had received a grant and they had some leftover funds. And so we only had those grants for like a period of 6 months, but it was perfect timing to really kick off the work that was already going to be required from the READ Act. The READ Act funding didn't completely cover the cost of all of the training, and so this was a great way to, again, we were doing something that was required, and it was a great way for us to be able to minimize that impact on the general fund. Special education pipeline is similar to the Grow Your Own grants, but is specific to special education teachers. The Stronger Connections grant was a piece of federal legislation that supports a variety of different initiatives. It was unique that we were able to use that to fund really some project management around our strategic plan, and so we were able to hire Gretchen Ocasio through that grant, and so that was a really exciting opportunity to be able to try something and to see how that fit into helping us reach our goals. The multi-tiered systems of support was a grant that allowed us to add another individual to the MTSS team as we are building out these processes. So our coordinator, Jill Dunn, is funded through other funding source, but this has allowed for us to do some more professional development and add somebody else to that team. So next 2 are around, again, supporting, there was some additional funds that supported some professional development around those topics. Opportunity Labs was around mental health funding specifically. And then you're, again, aware of the generous donation from Mayo Clinic to support us through that fiscal year after the referendum failed. This is last year. So we were able to get 3 grants to community schools. So that is one example. All of these 3 were community schools already. And so we were able to apply funding that freed up general fund dollars in those buildings. So some grants have like, they must supplement, not supplant. There are a few grants on here that allow you to supplant. And one of them is the community schools. They want to fund that initiative. And so we were able to free up some of those funds at those buildings and be able to, and received 3 community schools grants there. We are currently applying for 2 more. They're due on Friday for 2 more of our community schools. Both the phlebotomy, the Mayo Clinic phlebotomy grant and the Youth Skills grant support transportation for students that are in our phlebotomy program at Mayo Clinic. So that is a program where students are actually at Mayo Clinic for the training, and so great opportunity for them, but not something that we necessarily have a funding source for that transportation. So those 2 grants came in the same fiscal year, but the Youth Skills Training Grant is being used for this year of transportation, and the Mayo Clinic private donation was for last year. Okay, 6 minutes. We're almost to this list. The Grow Your Own Early Childhood, again, specific to raising up those that are interested in teacher positions in their area of early childhood. The Community Facilities Project was a piece of its federal funds that were awarded to the state They were COVID-era dollars that were about increasing accessibility and schools as community centers. And so Gage is doing some work around their community schools room and around their kitchen, again, to make it a more inviting space for families. Mayo Clinic donated to allow us to hire the consultants that are working with us from EdFirst on our strategic plan. And then there's a couple on here: No Child Left Inside, Safe Routes to Schools, and Wheels to Waterways. That are all things that Deidre Conroy wrote to support the work that she's doing around Safe Routes to School. And then the social work demonstration grant was just a little grant about getting some more items for our social workers. And then the last two there, the language revitalization grant and ethnic studies grant, working with Natalia Benjamin on those two projects. Again, those are kind of startup innovation grants. Oh, we're not done. One more. Okay, this is what we're working on right now. So we were recently awarded a school-based health center grant. That was another one that allowed us to supplant the coordinator for the school-based health clinic out at ALC. So again, freeing up general fund dollars, as well as doing some work about increasing access for our students that don't have stable housing to be able to access the school-based health center. Let Music Fill My World is a really fun story of a student of ours, that Ramon Campos, who submitted for a scholarship for college, is what he was, I think, intending to submit for. But with it, he was awarded and selected. And so in addition to some funding for him individually, it came with $300,000 to support a music educator at a school that has never had a full-time music educator. So ALC we are posting a music teacher position there. So they, for the first time, will have a full-time music teacher position.
And the board's going to meet Ramona at the next meeting.
More to come on that, yes. And so then we have several things here that are pending. We actually got notification on the cybersecurity. That's another one where we have cybersecurity liability insurance, and all we had to do was fill out an application, submit our receipt, and we received $175,000 of funding for that. So sometimes we're funding innovation, sometimes we're just freeing up some dollars when we are allowed to write grants for things that are currently available. So esports, working at expanding that. The NET is non-exclusionary discipline. Again, focusing on some training there and working with Angie's team. Youth Voice, I'm working with Sarah Louise on that one, and we're working on planning a youth summit, possibly in the spring. And then, as I mentioned, the full-service community schools that are due on Friday. Walking quickly through our process around the grant. So first is just identifying grant opportunities. A lot of that, you'll see that we're doing state of Minnesota grants, so just monitoring those websites. We do have a database that we also can use for finding grant opportunities. The first step is just to review that request for proposal. Does it match with some of our strategic goals right now? Is it a good fit for us? If we think so, after that, and I say we, me usually, and some who else I'm working with, we would attend the webinar, submit any questions. And then I really like to work with the team that would be involved in that work to develop a strong concept. So I like to have a strong concept really written out to guide our work before we would go into actually writing a response. So making sure we understand what the goals of the program are, what we would be using the budget for, how we would be building out this program. And so that's a lot of collaboration with many of the directors and the schools across the district. Then in the writing phase, we'll write that and build a budget in collaboration with finance. Reviewing that with Dr. Patel and cabinet members along the way, but kind of as a final check, and then submitting it to the funder. There's usually about a 12 to 16 week wait period, and then determining or finding out whether or not it was funded. Then there comes this contracting period where we may need to make changes to the work plan or make changes to the budget based on how much is funded, and we would develop a contract that outlines the grant requirements. So working a lot with Andy Krogstad on that process. And then we will submit to the school board if the amount is over 175,000 and work with the team on implementation. So philanthropic, oh, I'm at my time. Philanthropic support for pre-K-12 education is in flux. The changes in the federal government have, I think, put the whole system in flux. I follow one grant company that says everything kind of flows down from federal funding. So as the changes are happening with the federal government, that's also changing some of the things that private foundations are funding. And so many private foundations are not giving directly to schools anymore and prefer to fund kind of school adjacent organizations. So that is kind of affected kind of what our strategy is as a district. Right now, state grants continue to be available, but with the uncertainty around the budget for the state of Minnesota, that may change as well. So the next wave of our strategy around philanthropic support will really be built around what our strategic plan is and identifying what those priorities are and having the strategy come along to provide additional funding. Do you have questions?
Does our track record, especially in the private funders, getting a grant from a Chan Zuckerberg, does that open our doors to being either others are aware of us or like we can approach them as opposed to just waiting for something that's posted? I don't know how that works in the grant world.
We currently have a call set up. So I do think that when large funders support you and you have projects and also some research connections, I think is also desirable, that it opens up other organizations or other funders that would be interested in working with you. So that's kind of our hope. We have a call later this fall with Bush Foundation to see if they would be interested in funding a project around one of our strategic priorities. And so we hope so. Yeah.
Great. Director Cook?
I just wanted to reiterate, emphasize something that you said early on in your presentation, that one of the first things that you're looking for is coherence between the grant proposal and the strategic priorities of the district. Because in my world, in the corporate enterprise environment, there's this constant tension between product owners that have to decide what the product is going to be and how to define it, and the sales team that is responsible for bringing in revenue. And the sales team constantly just wants to bring in revenue, regardless of how connected it is to the product. And it is so important to maintain the diligence on what it is that we're raising funds for, so that we don't end up overextending ourselves and having all these sort of nebulous priorities all over the place. So thank you for that discipline. Please continue it. And I know that we didn't really hit on the first two pillars of your strategy, but I have to take a moment here at some point in this meeting to recognize that the long tradition of PTSAs endlessly raising funds for the next playground build is hopefully largely sunset here. We approved a significant playground installation at Washington Elementary. I'm so glad that we're doing that. I have this, I'm sure many of us have the scars of raising funds for playgrounds, and those PTSAs can do plenty of other things that are creative and great investments in their schools, and that's wonderful. But anyway, thank you so much for what you're doing and for the approach that you're taking.
Sure, Superintendent.
I just want to, I think, to Chair Nathan's point about private funders, and the board, as part of my evaluation every year, looks at how I spend my time, and we talked about this in my evaluation and planning for next year. I would say the single biggest area that I'm personally underinvesting my time is this one. That I actually have a lot of background in this, and it's not like I'm sitting around drinking coffee. There are a lot of other things that are priorities, but working with Denise and others to cultivate funding, I think we've laid the groundwork. This is an extraordinary record. I've seen school districts get recognized nationally for much less philanthropic support than we've generated here in 3 years. But this is one of those things where the tension for me is then I'm not in our schools. I'm not, working on the skip process. I'm getting on a plane to go talk to funders in New York or California or up in Minneapolis. But as I think about the next wave of our work, it needs to be bounded, but I need to have the discipline of making sure that this use of my particular background, and it's also being superintendent, but it's also, having spent 15 years raising money at the University of Minnesota and at Search Institute, this is a tool in my toolkit that I'm not adequately utilizing fully. So I think we've done pretty well, but I'm really looking forward as we move into our next strategic plan, really carving this out. And the board has made very clear that they support that allocation of my time going forward, even though it means somewhat less direct visibility on some things that we care about deeply here in Rochester, but we've got a lot of good things happening on that score. So I look forward to really taking this to the next level going forward.
And thank you for your work.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is our prep for action on the 2026-2027 course registration guide. We're scheduled to take action at our November 18th meeting. Superintendent Patel.
Thank you, Chair Nathan and board members. As you can see, we have Heather Willman, our Director of Secondary Education, and Heather Hogan, our Director of Academic Supports, coming up. The board's approval of the course registration guide, and I see our Chief Academic Officer, Mona Perkins, joining them. The course registration guide is annually approved by the board. We have taken this opportunity, in addition to asking you to approve some specific changes in the guide for next year, to give you a brief down payment on some of the things that we are doing to improve the registration process itself. So turn it over to the team, and thank you for your work.
All right. Thank you. Y'all kick it off.
All right. Good evening, board. Thank you for having us tonight. One thing we wanted to ground our presentation in tonight is thinking back to last spring, May, when the board approved the RPS mindsets, behaviors, and steps to student success, and keeping that in the back of your mind as we are going through some information about the registration guide. Particularly the steps to student success that we're thinking about, for example, with our 8th grade students. We ask our students to identify 3 training programs or post-secondary institutes of interest. They're creating their 4-year academic plan, and the registration guide is really key for them in that piece. Students then are registering for their 9th grade classes, and they continue to review that 4-year plan at least on a yearly basis as they're going through 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade in that planning for what their plan is for life after high school.
Right, so you might wonder how we get new courses. So we think a lot about how this aligns, kind of similar to what Denise was saying. How do these courses align with our mindsets, behaviors, and experiences? How do they align with the academic standards? How can they support deeper learning experiences? And then how can we think about the pathways for our students in their lives after high school? So as we're thinking about what we might want to add, we want it to be a dynamic course guide. We don't want it to stay the same, but we also want to make sure that we're thinking about those priorities. So our new courses for this year, we have a new course, Health and Physical Fitness for Life at MnSync. So this is kind of a novel concept because it's co-taught. So it's the health teacher and the bio teacher teaching together. You might wonder what that looks like in an online environment, but there's a lot of self-reflection and then a lot of independent work that the students do, but they tried that model out and really appreciated it. We have a comparative politics and government class that will be new at John Marshall. It's proposed by Seth Ledke, who teaches social studies and does amazing things there and is really excited to try this out. So comparing and contrasting government systems around the world, and then a part of that will be a portfolio. So when you think about that deeper learning piece, really hits that. We have American Sign Language. If you all approve that. I think that's on the docket tonight, so that will be back in the course guide. We're excited about that. We have something called Intro to Family and Consumer Sciences at Century. So the FACS department at Century really wanted to try something new. They wanted to try kind of a sampler platter of all of the different things you could do in family and consumer sciences. So we're going to see if the students are interested in that approach. But that's what that course will be, kind of a little bit of everything, and then they can learn about that pathway. The life transition class is a special education class, and the students will be working on transition skills. So it's any students with disabilities and then having that protected time to work on transition skills. And then the last one is an interpretation and translation class. So any of our students that speak another language can think about getting trained as an interpreter or translator. So there'll be kind of a train the trainer model where we talk about the ethics of that. And then they'll also have some opportunity to do some job shadowing and possibly support some family events in our schools. So we're excited about that. There's a new designation as well for sports biology. In the past, it was not NCAA approved. So we were able to provide some more documentation, so any of our students that take that course and are also interested in college athletics will be able to count that as a science course.
As part of the key initiative with the registration process the last year, we looked at enhancements to communication, both for parents and students around the registration process. So to highlight a couple of additions that we provided, we had some college conversation events where families were able to learn about how their students could earn college credit while still in high school. We did some online sessions for families where they could learn about the course registration guide and how we were transitioning to utilizing Zello for the registration process. And then for the past 2 years, we have administered a survey for parents on the registration process where they are able to share with us about that experience and provide recommendations on how they would improve, how they would like us to improve the process. We've also added for students targeted outreach based on Zello profiles. So for example, at Dakota last year during the 8th grade registration process, the counselor was looking at students who were either matched with careers in computer science or they had saved careers in computer science, and specifically female students, because we are dramatically underrepresented in our computer science courses with our girls. And so the counselor did some small group advising for those students and encouraged them to sign up then for those intro courses for their 9th grade year. We hosted on-site college fairs at our 3 high schools, and we had that event again this year, and they were highly attended, and if anyone had a chance to stop in at those, you could see how highly engaged students were with our college visitors. And then also the survey for the registration process was provided to students as well, so that we could hear from them directly how the registration process is from their perspective, and for them to be able to provide suggestions for improvements to that process. And with our system-wide initiative this year on the registration process, we are working on implementing the recommendations that came both from families, students, and then also our counselor and registration registrars at our high schools.
All right, so we lastly just want you to know that there may be more changes, more substantive changes next year, because as we work through that strategic plan, we're already having robust conversations about what else can we be thinking about to support our students? And we're thinking about that idea of educational achievement, student engagement, and then attracting families. What are the things that our students really are interested in learning about? And then how do we keep that academic rigor high? So we want you to kind of have a preview that next year we may be bringing more things when we come to talk to you about the course guide.
Board members, any specific questions? So I have some. So are we at the point where or can we use Zello for the registration process itself? Is that
We did last year.
Okay.
Yes.
So we've got nice automated electronic approach. Well, that's great. And then on the health and physical fitness for life, I was really excited to see that class. Because I know in the experience when my kids were in high school, a lot of kids were looking to try to meet those graduation requirements outside of the school year. So they were going online or taking them at college to free up some space. So I'm wondering, first of all, could a student currently have 7 in-person classes and take this course? Or is our cap 7 regardless of in-person versus online? Because I know some kids sort of do a mix.
Yeah, yes, you can. I was trying to make sure I understood the question though. So you said, can they take 7 or are they capped at 7?
Right.
Okay.
So they're not able to take more than, so they wouldn't be able to add an additional course and say, okay, I'm going to get that out of the way.
Okay.
And we don't have an opportunity for summer right now for pay. Some districts do that where students and families can pay for particular courses. We don't have that set up right now. So it would have to be one of their courses that are in their schedule.
And that was going to be my second question, is if that's something that we could maybe think about considering, because with our CTEC and our multiple block classes, we want to encourage as many students to take that as possible, but it just becomes physically impossible with scheduling. You all know that. I'm glad you mentioned that the other districts do it, because yeah, I looked at, I'd rather get the money internally than send it off to a college somewhere else. And then the other thing that I just wanted to mention is, maybe it's because I had kids in high school for 8 years and then some years in between doing advocacy. I look at the course catalog every year because I like to see what we're offering. And I think this course catalog is just such a great demonstration of the positive attributes of Rochester Public Schools, the thing that the superintendent always talks about is making us a district of choice. And I look through and I looked at some patterns. And of course we have, our core subjects, but our core subject classes are very robust. But in addition, we ask our kids to take about 20 courses of electives. And those options for electives are not minimal. There's 12 or 13 other subject areas that kids can take electives in. We've got CTEC and PTEC that offer these unique pathways towards the career certification or technical or professional work. We've got MinSync online. We have 5 programs to earn college credit, and those are 50 courses, and that's not including any PSEO courses. We have our honors diploma program with the honors courses and our honors options. And we have high school credit opportunities for, like we heard tonight from the unified program. They can do mentoring, they can do work experience, they can do internship, and we have the diploma recognition of service learning and world language proficiency. So when I hear what you talk about with Zello and the work you're doing to allow kids to find their pathway, we're really offering them a robust list of opportunities to fit in those passions and their interests with the courses that we have. And I really appreciate what everybody does at all the high schools, what you do, to make sure that these options do remain both broad and deep. And the course registration guide, I think, is something that a lot of people focus on only when their kids are in high school. But if you don't have kids in high school yet and you want to look forward to seeing what opportunities are going to be available for your kids in Rochester Public Schools, that's your roadmap. So I really appreciate it. Anything else, board members? All right, we will move on to approve this at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, our next item are not as exciting as the course registration guide. Our policy committee recommendations from our October 9th meeting. This is the first of two prep for action briefings, and we will vote on these on December 2nd. Director Marvin, I believe you're beginning.
Yes, we'll start out with a very popular policy, 412, and its associated procedure. This is, 412 is about expense reimbursement. There were no changes recommended. However, the employee out-of-district travel guide will be added to the procedure. Policy 515 and its associated procedure. This is protection and privacy of pupil records. The procedure adds information that parent information cannot be included in directory information. Our district had already been doing that. It also includes an attachment for the deadline of submissions of forms. I did 4 in less than a minute.
Very good. Policy 533 has a clarification that home-prepared foods and baked items may not be provided to students during celebrations and parties or snacks brought by parents during the school day. And that's language that was moved from policy 730.1R that we're proposing to rescind. Policy 534 includes mandatory changes from the 2025 Minnesota legislature regarding our school meals policy, and it clarifies the free school meals program and the ability to purchase a second breakfast or a second lunch. We also clarified account balances amount before going to collection and notification language on collections, and added language regarding adults being able to purchase lunches. Procedure 534A is an RPS only procedure. We recommend the title be changed to student meal accounts. We're changing family throughout our policies and procedures to parents and guardians. And we also changed the free and reduced price lunch application to application for education benefits, and clarified negative balance amounts and notification process.
So policy 702, accounting, there were no MSBA model policy changes to this policy, and the references to some procedures that do not exist were deleted. Policy 705, investments, also does not have any recommended MSBA policies changes. There were some changes in titles to superintendent or designee and director of finance. Policy 707, there were mandatory changes from the Minnesota legislature for this policy. Students with disabilities were added to policy 707. Transportation of public school students, language was changed to parents, guardians, and the title of the director of transportation was updated. Policy 709 also had some mandatory changes from the Minnesota legislature. This is policy on student transportation safety. Student safety training dates were deleted, language was changed to parents, guardians, and the title of Director of Transportation was updated. So procedures 709.A1, 709.A2, 709.A3, procedures, there were no changes to those, and these are all forms regarding bus drivers. Policy 710, once again, no MSBA policy changes to this. Policy extracurricular transportation. Some titles were updated, and the reference to procedures to 710 was removed because it does not exist. Policies 711, video recording on school buses. Policy 713, student activity accounts, and policy 714, fund balances. There were no MSBA policy changes or cabinet recommendations, and these policies are part of the 3-year review cycle.
Policy 712 is video surveillance. Missing language from the MSBA model policy and legal references were added, and our committee recommends that the title be changed to video surveillance other than on buses to match the MSBA model policy title. Policy 730.1R, our committee recommends to rescind this policy because other Model policies and RPS procedures address the same issues. Policy 533 and Procedure 902A have been updated to ensure the intent of the relevant language in Policy 730.1R has been maintained, and the policy document notes where all current language is covered in other policies and procedures. And then Policy 801, which is equal access to school facilities, no changes were recommended.
Policy 802, disposition of obsolete equipment and material. There are mandatory changes from the Minnesota legislature regarding the surplus books provision, and language was changed to parents and guardians from family. Policy 820.1R, there are no MSBA model policy changes, and the word cabinet was changed to superintendent or designee. And Procedure 902A includes a clarification on the prohibition of the use of kitchen equipment and utensils by internal or external groups without the presence and supervision of a student's nutrition services staff member. Any questions or comments on any of the policies, board members? Great, we'll have a second briefing at the next meeting. Our next item is an action item, language access plan. The board discussed this in prep for action at the October 7th regular meeting. I'll read the resolution and then we can have discussion if necessary. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 535 does hereby approve the Rochester Public Schools Language Access Plan as presented.
Move approval.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution has been approved. The next item, 9.2, is an action item on our World Language Plan. The board discussed this in prep for action at the October 14th study session. Be it resolved that the School District of Independent School District 535 hereby approves the following adjustments to world language offerings at RPS. 1, discontinue offering Latin as a world language in a phase-out model over the course of the 2026-2027 and 2027-2028 school years, allowing students currently enrolled in the Latin program to finish their course of study. 2, discontinue offering advanced level German courses, German 3 and 4, at the conclusion of the 2027-2028 school year, allowing students who are currently enrolled in the German program to finish their course of study and continue offering German 1 and 2 only in subsequent years. 3, beginning in the 2026-2027 school year, the district will introduce American Sign Language, ASL, as a new in-person world language option.
Move approval.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? I have to say I really appreciate the clarification in the resolution, especially for allowing the students to complete their course of study if they've already started. And I have heard from a number of community members how excited they are to see American Sign Language added to our offerings. So thank you for that. Anything else, board members? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution has been approved. Our next item is our ABCD, and I think we've got it on the screen. November 18th at 5:30 is our special session on our Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness Report. That will be immediately followed by our regular meeting, which will include monitoring of our annual inventory of fixed asset report, Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness Report to the board. We have a prep for action item on, we may not have that strategic plan proposal anymore. That might be replaced by our building blocks.
Yes.
Yes.
It will be about the strategic
Strategic
plan
plan.
broadly. It will
Yes.
definitely not be
The proposal.
beginnings of a new proposal.
Okay. I think we're also going to talk about our briefing on the policy committee, approval of the audit report for fiscal year 2024-25. It is that time of year again. And then the approval of the course registration guide. We have a meeting on December 2nd, where we will hear about our achievement and integration aid report, and then another component of our strategic plan reporting. So any other items board members would like to add to a future agenda? All right, and the upcoming board meeting dates, I mentioned on November 18th, we have both a special and a regular meeting that starts at 5:30. December 2nd, our regular meeting. December 16th, please note that is a special session beginning at 6:00 p.m. for our annual Truth and Taxation meeting, and that will be followed by a regular meeting immediately after. And then our first meeting of 2026, we have a meeting on December 16th. December 16th is our regular meeting, and then our first meeting of 2026 is at 5:30 on January 6th. And hearing no other business, this meeting is adjourned at, I can get my watch to work, 7:44 p.m.